You know, when it comes to physical education rackets, badminton rackets in particular right now I'm talking about, there's no comparison between HL and any other racket line. We really have covered every aspect of making a great physical education racket. Starting with even this 110, which is a really entry-level badminton racket, but it is the minimum of what you would want in a physical education racket. What makes it so good is it does have a steel head, and that's a drawback in terms of technology and in terms of strength. But it has its advantages. The advantage to the steel head is it allows for the double grommets to be put in. The double grommets have rounded edges on both sides of the racket. And what that does for the racket, let's say you're in an environment that's really dry, maybe too hot, but pretty brutal weather. Rounded grommets really are advantageous in that sense because they don't turn stiff, they can't cut the string when the bird comes in contact with both. And in the case of this 110, the other thing that's nice is because it is a steel head, the stringing is around 13 or 14 pounds, which back when steel heads were invented was unheard of, how strong it would be compared to what they used to be. What that does for you again though is that with a 13 or 14 pound string job versus a 16 to 18 pound string job, the strings last a little bit longer. There's just no denying it. The other thing that's great about this is that it's not a steel racket with some horrific steel, nylon coated steel, or some other hybrid strange badminton string that people have come up with the idea of making it, quote, stronger, that tear up the shuttles and literally just break the racket frame anytime it hits anything because the steel is so unforgiving. The lawn fiber string is forgiving, which allows the racket to take greater impact. What I call normal abuse in PE, it occurs, and so you have to try to build a racket with that in mind. The badminton rackets, all of them have this SPS system on it, which is elongated double butt caps, and the grips are held on with a double-sided tape system that doesn't ever come loose and wiggle around. All of our cones are tacked in as well as being glued on. So consequently, things last. This racket being a great example of that. And the price is so great when it comes to these rackets. Our prices are so competitive. This is the 3700. This racket, great PE racket, 60-61 aluminum head, zinc aluminum T. It's got the side-tail nylon grommets. It has strings tighter than any strings I had when I was growing up playing badminton. This racket, when I was a kid, would have been the cream of the crop. This would have been your $50-60 racket back in the late 1960s. They were dreaming of having a material this good to make a badminton racket out of. Again, all of the other components, a great racket, only about 100 grams, 103, 104 grams. When you jump from that, you jump into the 1979. This is basically the same racket as that 3700 I was just holding. Of course, it's blue. The difference here is it has the power grip, and what the power grip does, it does make the grip a little bigger, so that's a bit of a downside if you, especially if you're like a junior high school or you have students that are smaller. But what the power grip does allow you to do, it allows you to grip the racket a little more loosely and consequently swing the racket faster without literally losing the racket and having it fly out of your hand. Power grips aren't necessarily more durable, but just because there's more compression in the grip, there is a greater durability that occurs because the students or whoever is using the racket doesn't have the same amount of force in contact with the grip on a continual basis. Same string, same butt cap, of course, and all of the same components in the shaft. Now, after that, we have two, what I call the hybrid rackets. We make a 3700 SS. Now, this is super short. This is as short as it gets. I mean, I guess you can make it a little shorter. You can make it no shaft. The idea here is really twofold. You're going to use this racket maybe if you're a K or pre-K, maybe first, second grade. The other reason you're going to use this racket is you may have students that have just a tremendous difficulty in executing the high deep underhand serve or just executing a low underhand forehand serve because of the eye-hand coordination issues. You may have an adaptive program that needs to have rackets that are shorter to facilitate visually impaired players. And this racket is phenomenal. The weight is incredibly light. The balance is so light. The other thing that people do with this is they buy 2 or 3 of these, and you can actually take a player. Let's say you've got 1 or 2 individuals in your PE class that are just hands above the rest, and you want to try to make it a more competitive tournament. There's all kinds of ways to do that, you know, from making a player hold a ping pong ball and a spoon when they play and keep a balance on that. But this is another way you could do it. You could take a 3700 SS and make the strongest player in class play with a shorter racket, and thus make it a little bit more competitive. This is the 1979 Junior, and in this racket, it's similar to the 3700 SS. The idea here is it's going to have the real small grip for your younger players. It's going to be lighter, and if you have intermediate age kids, you know, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade maybe, that where the racket more closely emulates the length of the arm. That's kind of what you're trying to get at with all of these short rackets. But the other application for these short rackets, like the 1979 Junior and the 3700 SS, is if you have a low ceiling height. If your ceiling height is low and you're not able to hit the shuttle with a regular racket at full speed, you can use an activities room, and you can play with a 3700 SS or a 1979 Junior, and you could take, for example, the high altitude Condor slow in yellow, and you'd have a slow enough shuttlecock that you could play in a room and have a great time with a shorter court and a lower ceiling, and still get all of the exercise value that you've come to expect from playing. When you move on from this racket, you move up into our one. This is sort of a specialty type racket for PE. This is called the X2, the SBS X2. And it's got the power grip. Quite frankly, it has to have the power grip. The reason is the head is so heavy that if it didn't have a power grip and the extra weight that brings to the racket would be so out of balance you would hate to play with it. What we've done here is we've taken a regular 1979 tube and we've doubled the thickness inside of the tube, and we've made a super racket. And it's a super racket in terms of contact, impact, and in terms of weight. What's really nice though is that it's extremely durable. It plays reasonably well considering the weight. Again, all I can do is go back and refer to myself here. When I was a kid playing badminton, this racket would not have been excessively heavy. So it's not like the racket itself is going to hurt anybody, or it's too heavy to play with, or you can't swing the racket. It just requires a slower stroke, and there's no way to swing it any faster than it will go. It's the same difference of using maybe a baseball bat that's a little bit heavier. If you hit and accelerate this to max speed, you're going to hit the bird very, very hard indeed anyway.